My future son-in-law kept asking about the property line. Not once, not twice, but every single time he visited our ranch in Colorado. Tyler would stand at the kitchen window, coffee in hand, and stare past the meadow toward the tree line where our land ended. "Where exactly does your property stop, Robert?" he'd ask casually, as if he were just making conversation. The first time, I thought nothing of it. The second time, I figured he was just curious about country living. By the fifth time, something in my gut twisted. Claire, my daughter, would laugh it off. "He's just interested in ranch life, Dad. You know how city boys are." But I'd spent 40 years as an engineer before retiring. I'd learned to pay attention to patterns, and Tyler's pattern was becoming very clear. I met Tyler 6 months ago when Claire brought him home for Thanksgiving. 33 years old, clean cut, worked as an investment advisor in Denver. He said all the right things, complimented my wife Linda's cooking, asked thoughtful questions about our life on the ranch. He seemed perfect, maybe too perfect. Linda died 3 years ago. Cancer took her fast, and suddenly I found myself alone in this big house on 200 acres that we'd bought 30 years ago for almost nothing. Back then, it was just scrubland. Now, with Denver sprawling outward, developers were circling like vultures. I'd gotten offers, big ones, but this was Linda's dream. I couldn't sell her dream. Claire understood that. She'd grown up here, helped her mother plant the garden that now bloomed wild every spring. After Linda passed, Claire checked on me every weekend, worried I was getting lonely. When she met Tyler at some networking event, and they started dating, I was happy for her. She deserved someone after that disaster with her ex-boyfriend. The engagement came fast. 4 months of dating, then Tyler proposed at some fancy restaurant in Denver. Claire called me, breathless with excitement. I said all the things a father should say. "Congratulations. I'm happy for you. He seems like a great guy." But I kept thinking about the property line. The wedding was set for late September, right here at the ranch. Claire wanted to get married where her mother had loved. She'd already hired a planner, booked a caterer, sent out invitations to 200 people. Tyler was all smiles, helping with arrangements, suggesting we expand the ceremony area. "You know, Robert," he said one Saturday in July, "we could really open up this space if we cleared those trees along the western edge." "Those trees mark the property boundary," I said. "Right, but how far back does your land actually go?" There it was again. That evening, after Tyler and Claire left, I sat in my study and pulled out the property deed. 215 acres, purchased in 1994 for $80,000. Linda and I had scrimped and saved for years to afford it. Now it was worth over $4 million, maybe more with development rights. I'd never told Claire the exact value. She knew we owned the ranch free and clear, knew I had a comfortable retirement, but she didn't know about my patents. During my engineering career, I'd invented a small component used in industrial refrigeration systems. Nothing glamorous, but the royalties had been flowing for 25 years. Between that and smart investments, I had just over $8 million in assets. The ranch was the visible part. The rest sat quietly in accounts Claire had never asked about. I'd lived modestly on purpose. Drove a 10-year-old truck, wore jeans and flannel, fixed things myself. After watching Linda's wealthy cousins tear each other apart over inheritances, I'd learned that money changes people. Better to be the quiet neighbor nobody suspects. But now Tyler was asking questions. I called my attorney, Margaret, the next morning. "I need you to look into someone for me," I said. "Tyler Hutchinson. Says he's an investment advisor in Denver." "Robert, is this about Claire's fiancé?" "Just a precaution." Margaret sighed. "I'll have someone run a background check. But Robert, if you have concerns, you should talk to Claire." "Not yet. I might be wrong." But I wasn't wrong. My gut had been right too many times. 3 days later, Margaret called. "Robert, we need to meet." Not on the phone. I drove to her office in Boulder. She closed the door and handed me a folder. Tyler Hutchinson is exactly who he says he is. Licensed investment advisor, works for Cordell Financial Group, clean record, no criminal history. But, she pulled out another document. I had our investigator dig deeper. Tyler's been engaged twice before, both times to women from wealthy families. Both engagements ended abruptly, right after he'd gained access to family financial information. No lawsuits, no allegations, just .co, incidental timing. My hands tightened on the folder. Names? Rebecca Thornton, daughter of a tech CEO. Engagement lasted 5 months. Ended 2 weeks after Tyler attended a family meeting about the Thornton estate. Sarah Mitchell, daughter of a real estate developer. Engagement lasted 4 months. Ended right after Sarah's father revised his will. And nobody sued? These families don't sue, Robert. They pay to make problems disappear quietly. But I made some calls. Rebecca's father told me, off the record, that Tyler had asked very specific questions about property transfers and inheritance structures. He suspected Tyler was planning something but couldn't prove it. I felt sick. What about Claire? Claire has no significant assets of her own. She makes good money in marketing, but nothing that would interest someone like Tyler. However, Margaret paused. If Tyler thinks Claire stands to inherit this ranch and doesn't know its actual value, he might be gambling on future assets. Or he's researched me and knows more than he's letting on. Margaret nodded. I'd recommend having a serious conversation with Claire. But I couldn't, not without proof. Claire was so happy, so excited about the wedding. What if I was wrong? What if I destroyed her relationship over paranoia? I needed to be sure. That weekend, Tyler came by to help with some wedding setup. He parked his Audi in the driveway and walked up to the porch where I was sitting. Robert, you got a minute? I wanted to run something by you. Sure. He sat down, all earnest concern. Look, I know this might be sensitive, but Claire and I have been talking about our future. Finances, planning, all that responsible adult stuff. He laughed. I'm an investment advisor, so I can't help myself. I was wondering, have you thought about estate planning, making sure everything's set up properly for Claire? My blood went cold, but I kept my face neutral. I've got a will. That's great, but with a property like this, you might want to consider a trust. More tax efficient. I'd be happy to help. No charge. I mean, I'm going to be family. I'll think about it. And Robert, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but at your age, you should also think about long-term care planning. What if something happens? Who's going to manage this place? A ranch is a lot of work for one person. There it was. The same script he'd probably used with Rebecca's father and Sarah's father. Plant the seed, get access to the financials. Then what? I didn't know yet, but I was going to find out. You make a good point, I said slowly. Tell you what, why don't you and I sit down sometime next week? You can explain all these strategies to me. Tyler's eyes lit up. Absolutely. I'll bring some materials. We can really optimize your situation. After he left, I called Margaret again. I need surveillance. Robert, he just asked about my estate planning and long-term care. He's positioning. I need to know what he's really planning. Margaret was quiet for a moment. I know someone, a private investigator. Very discreet. Hire them. The investigator, a woman named Patricia, was worth every penny. Within a week, she had Tyler's phone records, his email patterns, his meeting schedules. Nothing illegal, she assured me. Just good old-fashioned detective work and some strategic social engineering. She called me on a Tuesday evening in August. Mr. Caldwell, you need to hear this. She'd managed to place a recording device in Tyler's car during a routine service appointment at the dealership. It was legal, she assured me, because the device was technically a maintenance sensor that happened to record audio. The lawyers could figure it out later. I listened to the recording in my study, alone. Tyler's voice. Yeah, I'm at the ranch again, playing the dutiful son-in-law. This old man has no idea. Another voice, male. You sure about the value? Tyler. Marcus. I've checked the county records 3 times. 215 acres, and he bought it in '94 for peanuts. With Denver development reaching this far out, we're talking minimum $4 million, probably closer to 5 if we play it right. Marcus. And the old man? Tyler. He's got to be loaded. Look at this property. Free and clear. He's been retired for 5 years. Lives alone. No debt. He's probably sitting on a couple million in investments. Maybe more. The daughter has no clue. She thinks Daddy's just a regular middle-class retiree. Marcus. So, what's the play? Tyler. I marry Claire in September. Spend the first year being the perfect husband, the devoted son-in-law. Get him to trust me. Maybe get financial power of attorney under the guise of helping out. Old guy lives alone. Who knows what could happen? A fall? An accident? Some cognitive decline? Before you know it, he's in a care facility. I'm managing his affairs. And Claire inherits everything. We'll be divorced before she figures out what happened, and I'll take my half in the settlement. Marcus laughed. You're a cold bastard, Tyler. I'm a practical businessman. Rebecca was a waste of time. Her father caught on too fast. Sarah was better, but her old man had everything in a trust. This one's perfect. Small-town guy. No sophistication about protecting assets. It's like he's asking to be taken. I turned off the recording. My hands were shaking, not with fear, with rage. But rage wouldn't help Claire. I needed to be smart. I called Margaret and Patricia into an emergency meeting. I have the proof. Now I need a strategy. Margaret listened to the recording twice. This is criminal conspiracy. We could go to the police. And tell Claire her fiancé is a con artist 3 weeks before the wedding, with 200 guests coming. She'll never forgive me if I don't have ironclad evidence. She'll think I'm trying to control her life. He literally admitted to planning your potential murder, Robert. Potential. He didn't say he'd do it himself. A good lawyer would tear that apart. I need him to incriminate himself in front of witnesses. At the wedding, Patricia raised an eyebrow. You want to expose him during the ceremony? I want Claire to hear it. I want her to understand what kind of person she was about to marry, and I want 200 witnesses so he can't spin his way out of it. We spent the next 2 weeks preparing. Patricia installed tiny cameras around the ranch property. Margaret prepared legal documents that would protect Claire and me no matter what happened. I played the role of the trusting future father-in-law, meeting with Tyler to discuss estate planning. He came to my study with a briefcase full of forms. Okay, Robert, I've prepared some documents that will really streamline everything. This power of attorney form will let me help manage things if you ever need it. And this one updates your will to establish a trust with Claire as the primary beneficiary, but with me as trustee to make sure everything's handled properly. I pretended to study the documents. And this helps with taxes? Absolutely. You could save tens of thousands. I nodded slowly. You know, Tyler, I've been thinking. You're right that this place is getting to be a lot for me. Maybe it is time to start making changes. His eyes gleamed. I'm glad you're being practical about this, but I'm curious about something. You keep asking about the property boundaries. Why is that? He didn't miss a beat. Just thinking long-term, Robert. If Claire inherits this place, we might want to sell off some parcels, keep the house, and a few acres. No point holding on to land we won't use. We? Well, Claire and I. As her husband, I'd want to help her make smart financial decisions. I smiled. Of course. Family helps family. He left that day thinking he'd won. I let him think it. The week before the wedding, Claire noticed I seemed distracted. Dad, are you okay? You've been quiet lately. Just thinking about your mother. Wishing she could be here for this. Claire hugged me. I know, Dad. I miss her too, but I think she'd be happy for me. Tyler's wonderful. I wanted to tell her everything right then. But I couldn't. She needed to hear it herself, understand it completely. Otherwise, she'd always wonder if I'd manipulated the situation. I'm sure she would be, I said, hating myself for the lie. The day before the wedding, Tyler's friend Marcus arrived. I recognized him from Patricia's surveillance photos. He was staying at a hotel in town, supposedly Tyler's best man. I watched them at the rehearsal dinner, laughing together, confident. Tyler gave a toast to Robert, who's welcomed me into his family, and to Claire, who's made me the luckiest man alive. Tomorrow is going to be perfect. Everyone applauded. I raised my glass and smiled. The wedding day was perfect. Colorado weather. September sunshine, aspen leaves turning gold, mountains sharp against the blue sky. Linda would have loved it. Guests filled the folding chairs on our lawn. The arbor Claire had insisted on stood decorated with late summer flowers. I walked Claire down the makeshift aisle, her arm through mine, her mother's pearls at her throat. She looked so happy. It broke my heart knowing what was coming. "I love you, Dad," she whispered. "I love you too, sweetheart. Always." I took my seat in the front row. The ceremony began. The officiant started his speech about love and commitment. Tyler stood at the altar, perfect in his tuxedo, smiling. Then, during the exchange of vows, just as Tyler was about to say "I do," Claire's hand moved to her bouquet. She pulled out a small folded paper and handed it to me. Her eyes locked on mine, full of tears. I opened it. 3 words in her handwriting. "Dad, help me." Everything stopped. I looked at her. She was staring at Tyler, her face pale, and I realized she was terrified. I stood up. "Stop. Stop the ceremony." The crowd murmured. Tyler turned. "Robert." "What?" "Claire." I kept my voice calm. "What's wrong?" She took a shaky breath. The words came out in a rush. "I heard him last night. I went to his hotel room to surprise him, and I heard him talking to Marcus about how he was going to—" She couldn't finish. Tyler's face went red. "Claire, you're being ridiculous. You misheard. You said you were going to make sure my dad had an accident after we were married. You said once you had power of attorney, it would be easy." Her voice broke. "You said I was stupid and wouldn't figure it out until you'd already taken everything." The crowd erupted. Gasps, shouts, people standing up. Tyler grabbed Claire's arm. "You're hysterical. This is wedding day nerves." I moved forward, but 2 men were faster. The county sheriff and a deputy, both friends of mine who'd been sitting in the audience in plain clothes, had Tyler's arms behind his back in seconds. "Tyler Hutchinson," the sheriff said, "you're being detained for questioning regarding conspiracy to commit fraud and possible conspiracy to commit violence." Marcus tried to run. He didn't make it past the driveway before Patricia tackled him. She'd been waiting by the cars, just in case. The next hour was chaos. Guests being asked to give statements, Tyler screaming about false accusations and lawsuits, Claire sobbing in my arms. Margaret appeared with the recordings, the evidence files, everything we'd collected. Finally, the police took Tyler and Marcus away. The guests slowly dispersed, some supportive, others just eager for gossip. The caterers packed up the untouched dinner. Claire and I sat on the porch steps, still in our wedding clothes, watching the sun sink toward the mountains. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said quietly. "I should have told you sooner. I've known for 2 days. I heard them talking, and I just froze. I didn't want it to be real. I kept thinking maybe I'd misunderstood, maybe there was an explanation. So I went through with all the preparations, and I was going to marry him. And you gave me that note at the last possible second. Why, Claire?" She wiped her eyes. "Because I was scared. What if I was wrong? What if I ruined my own wedding over a misunderstanding? But then, standing there, about to say, 'I do,' I realized I couldn't marry someone I didn't trust. So I wrote the note, and I prayed you'd understand." I put my arm around her. "I did understand. I've understood for months." "You knew?" "I suspected. I had him investigated. I have recordings of him and Marcus planning this whole thing. I was going to expose him today, even if you hadn't given me that note." Claire stared at me. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you wouldn't have believed me. You'd have thought I was being a controlling father who didn't trust your judgment. You needed to discover it yourself. Come to your own conclusion. I was just there to back you up when you did." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I feel so stupid." "You're not stupid. You're someone who believes the best in people. That's a good quality, even when people don't deserve it. Tyler is a professional con artist. He's fooled women and families before. You're not the first, and probably not the last. What happens now?" "Now? The district attorney will review the evidence. Tyler and Marcus will likely face charges for conspiracy and fraud. You'll give your statement. We'll deal with canceling wedding gifts and apologizing to guests. Life goes on." We sat in silence for a while. Then Claire asked, "Dad, how rich are you?" I laughed. "Why do you want to know?" "Because Tyler kept saying you were loaded. I always thought we were comfortable but normal. Now I'm wondering what I don't know." Your mother and I bought this ranch for $80,000 in 1994. It's now worth about $4 million. I also hold several patents from my engineering work that pay royalties, and I've invested carefully for 30 years. Total assets, roughly $8 million. Claire's jaw dropped. $8 million? And you drive that old truck and wear clothes from Walmart? Money doesn't impress me, Claire. Your mother and I grew up poor. We knew what money could do to families, how it could poison relationships. We decided to live modestly, enjoy what we had, and not make wealth our identity. I wanted you to grow up normal, not as some rich kid who thought she was better than everyone else. And my inheritance is already in a trust that takes effect when I die. You'll be comfortable, but it's structured so no spouse can touch it without your explicit consent. I set that up years ago, after watching your Aunt Linda's divorce. I wanted to protect you. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I wish Mom was here." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." 3 months later, Tyler and Marcus were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted financial exploitation of an at-risk adult, and a handful of other crimes. Tyler took a plea deal, 5 years probation, full restitution of our investigation costs, and a permanent ban on working in financial services. Marcus got 2 years for his role. Claire moved back to the ranch for a while, recovering. She went to therapy, dealt with the betrayal, slowly rebuilt herself. She started dating again eventually, but she was more careful now, sadder, but wiser. As for me, I'm still here in the ranch house, still driving that old truck, still wearing flannel. But I did make one change. I had Linda's garden expanded, planted new roses, added a stone bench with her name on it. Sometimes Claire and I sit there in the evening, watching the sunset, and I tell her stories about her mother, about the woman who believed in buying land instead of fancy cars, in planting gardens instead of showing off jewelry, in building a life instead of maintaining an image. "Dad," Claire said one evening, "do you ever regret not being more open about the money? If I'd known, maybe I would have been more suspicious of Tyler from the start. Maybe. Or maybe you'd have attracted more Tylers, wondering if everyone who showed interest was after your inheritance. The way we did it, you gotta be yourself. You gotta make your own choices. And when things went wrong, you had the strength to ask for help. That's worth more than any amount of money." She leaned against me. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart." The sun dropped behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and purple. Somewhere in the meadow, a bird called. Linda's garden bloomed, wild and beautiful, just the way she'd wanted it. Money can't buy moments like this, but it can buy the security to enjoy them without fear. That's the real value of wealth, not what it displays, but what it protects. And I'd protect my daughter with every dollar I had, for as long as I lived.